Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I am your host, Kevin Wallace, and we have a very, very full episode to get into today. Look, so much has happened since the last time we recorded that you're in for a doozy of an episode on this one. It's a two-parter. In part one, it is all FC Cincinnati. New player signings, Kipp Keller, and rumored signings. Miles Robinson heading to FC Cincinnati. In addition, there was a CONCACAF Champions League draw and so much more. You throw that on top of the Open Cup news, well, you got one hell of a postcast episode for you here today. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I am joined by two gentlemen, finally, who are on this off-season journey with me. We're joined once again by Grayson. Welcome back from Parts Unknown, and by the Chief. And Chief, I need a status update. I've been worried about you since last week. Is it warm in your house?
It is warm, thankfully. Thank the god of heat, the god of HVAC, and the god of plumbing. It did take 2 full days of plumbing work at the house because on day one, the work was done, and then the person from Duke Energy showed up and said, "Not good enough. Try again."
Wow.
And when asked, like, what do we need to do to fix this? Not my problem. Call your people. And so called our people back again, and yeah, we're cooking now. It's exciting. It's amazing how the little things in life bring you so much joy, like the sound of your furnace turning on and your house not being warmed by an electric space heater. So we're good, happy, festive, glad to have Grayson back.
That is so lovely to hear. And yes, Grayson, how are we feeling? Do we feel recharged? I don't know. How are we feeling post time away?
I spent 23 hours traveling yesterday.
So recharged. Got it.
From when I got in the car to drive 3 hours to the airport, and when I got to my house, it was about 23 hours.
Wow.
So I'm energized.
Bring it on, baby.
That's a lot of time for complimentary beverages on the flight.
And that's after I think I slept 4 hours the previous night.
Oh, we definitely should have recorded yesterday. That would have been one of the all-time greatest podcasts.
Yeah, if you guys wanted to stay up till I think I got in my door at 12:30 a.m.
That would have been incredible content. Like, just tell us how your last 24 hours have been.
Right. Oh, hey, by the way, we just got this incredible Open Cup news. React now on Zero Sleep.
I was out. So I was 6 hours ahead. So when that news came out, I was feeling pretty good.
Yeah, because we were on the text message thread, and I didn't know when you were coming back, and I was like, "Do you want to just hop on at some point from whatever time it is in your place to get your quick reaction to the Open Cup news?" And quickly it came back. What Open Cup news?
Oh, you're gonna have a fun time on Twitter for the next 10 minutes.
Pour yourself another drink and back read this. It's a doozy.
Oh God, yeah, we will. I think obviously touch on the Open Cup news, but for the time being, let me just throw a thread out there. We are an FC Cincinnati podcast, and so we will talk about FC Cincinnati first here. There was a lot. Oh my God. I forget how much news happens when we move to one a week, like one episode a week. Like before, I don't know. I don't remember anything, being this crazy in the off season. And yet here we are. So much happens in 1 week this off season for FC Cincinnati.
Which makes sense because we're compressing a full off season like we had last year, we end the season in like mid-October, like late October.
Right.
And so we had from late October until the season kicking off in early March, late February.
Yeah.
Like that's a long time. That's months. We're now compressing all of that down into weeks. So yeah, it's going to be a little newsy from time to time.
That is true. We had a Winter
Speed
World
run.
Cup covering up a lot of stuff too. So
Oh yeah, we did, didn't we?
right. It's been a wild year so far.
Man.
So I throw it to you two, or maybe I'll let Grayson for rejoining the pod here. Grayson, where do you want to start first for FC Cincinnati news? There's player signings, re-signings, opponents, maybe signings, all sorts of fun stuff to go over here.
I think I think the first thing to talk about is we finally have a cap on Yuya Kubo's option years with FC Cincinnati.
That we know of.
Well, for the first time, there's been a reported end to his deal.
To this deal.
This is really a sad moment in FC Cincinnati history that we are finally faced with the fact that Yuya Kubo may not be forever an FC Cincinnati player. He may retire or, God forbid, play for another team at some point in the future. Yuya Kubo re-signs with FC Cincinnati. Good news. I think in general, we were all in favor of a Yuya Kubo re-signing. The real question will be, and this was always the question with Yuya Kubo, is what his salary requirements are. I have to imagine that has dropped off of the DP level wages he was making previously. But yeah, we've got him for Grace. I don't know. Do you have the contract details in front of you there, please?
He signed through 24 and 25 with an option for 2026.
Oh, so close to getting that long-term deal designation.
Right. Not quite a long-term extension.
Long-term-ish.
But I did, according to my numbers that I stole from Transfer Market, assuming no injury, by at some point next season, Kubo will have played more games for FC Cincinnati than he has for any other team in his career.
Which I think officially makes him an FC Cincinnati player.
Yeah, I think so.
Bring it on. I love that.
We are inevitable.
He's got 137 games for BSC Young Boys, and a lot more goals, too. But he's 100.
Are you suggesting that Young Boys didn't radically change his position and ask him to become a defensive mid in the middle of his contract?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at this, and his goal scoring record at literally every other team, well, except for FC Nuremberg, but at the rest of his teams, his goal scoring record is actually quite good.
Huh.
So I don't know. Maybe he should have just been played as a forward all along. But also, I think it also goes to show you that, just because you can score, all Europe is not equal, right?
Right.
So, if they move him back to striker this year, and he scores a ton of goals, is it joy or furious anger at how he's been misdeployed his entire time here?
I'm going to go with anger. You know how much we have been begging for a solid, reliable striker, to the point where when Brandon Vasquez put together his season last season, the entire world was ready to anoint him the next U.S. men's national team striker, the face of MLS, the next guy off to Europe for tens of millions of dollars. We have needed a striker for so long. Kubo played on a team with Barreal, Brenner, Locadia, Acosta. If we could have had a competent goal-scoring threat up top this whole time.
If Yuya Kubo next year wins the Golden Boot, and that's been here the entire time, and we just had a string of managers that just didn't want to play him at this position.
I think UEFA
violent anger would have to be the only response, right?
UEFA will have to pull the licensing for Jaap Stam for sure, and USSF will take another look at Pat Noonan just to see what was going on.
Yeah, so I just checked, and we scored 37 goals in the 2021 season.
Okay.
And some of the players on that team included Lucho Acosta, Brenner, Yuya Kubo, Alvaro Barreal, Brandon Vasquez. That team scored 37 goals over the entire MLS season. And the next year, Brenner and Vasquez scored just between the two of them 36. So
I'm glad we can laugh about this now.
So Kubo coming out next year and getting 18 goals of his own just makes that 2021 season funnier. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No, I think Kubo's role, and I don't want to say like hopefully it's reflected in his pay, because I don't really root for anybody to take a pay cut.
Right.
I assume it's a deal that makes sense for both sides.
Yeah.
And is a little cap friendlier than what we had him on this past year. I think he's kind of settled into this guy who's like occasionally looks like the best player on the field, but isn't like a starter at any position, and is just kind of the best backup at half the spots on the field.
Right.
And is going to start if, any of 5 different guys is unavailable.
Yeah. And as the roster's constructed right now, we assume there will be changes in the near future. But as it's constructed right now, I believe he is a starter on this team. So we'll see what else happens. But I still think he would start.
He could be the starter at 3 different positions on this team right now, depending on what the roster is. He could be a starter in the midfield. He could be a starter at wingback, or he could be the striker pair with Bupenza right now.
Well, so right now his started based on the current roster composition, which I think I get what Kevin's talking about. Junior Moreno is not on the roster,
correct?
Right.
Which by default makes Yuya Kubo the starter at that midfield position next to Obi. Which, if that's what we go into the season with, I don't consider that one of the positions of need, right?
Yeah,
because there's other spots where we don't currently have starters, like right back. But nevertheless, I would expect there to be another midfield signing, if only for like competition, right?
Okay, but that's interesting that you bring that up. Do you think we're going to go into the season? Not that he will be eventually, but we will go into the season with Yuya Kubo as the starter at some position on the field. Because we talked last week while you were in parts unknown about this idea that it's going to be very difficult for Albright to get all of his shopping done in one window, assuming that Vasquez and Barreal are sold. Do we think that at this point Yuya Kubo is a likely starter going into the season? Because now that you bring that up, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
I think the longer we go... Sorry, Kevin.
No, you're good.
I think the longer we go without firm announcements, or at least like stronger rumors than we've seen for Brandon and Alvaro, the more likely it is that Kubo is a starter match day 1. And my reasoning for that is you can't really bring in replacements for Brandon and Alvaro until you've sold them.
Yeah.
Because you need to have
infusion.
You need to get the GAM, and you need to have like the roster and budget space. And they're going to be looking at, we'll talk about one of these positions later, but they're going to be looking at in the near term, right back, whether it's right wing back or right back, center back for sure. probably a midfield replacement for Moreno, even if it's not signing somebody who's a nailed on day one starter, but somebody probably ahead of Angulo.
Yeah.
From what we've seen, because I doubt that they're aiming to go into the season with a midfield depth chart that's like Kubo, Angulo, Pinto.
Yeah, that's basically your midfield depth right now.
Just that's not enough experience, I think, for where this team wants to be, especially with the quick competition of also having Champions League right at the start of the season. So the longer it takes to sell Vasquez and Barreal, the harder it becomes to not only replace those positions, but I also think to replace other starter level positions, because you're not sure what you have to work with in your roster. And I think that pushes the midfield replacement or midfield depth a little bit to the back burner. And while your focus is more on, we definitely need to get in a starter at right back and probably a starter at center back, because Mosquera's, almost certainly not coming back.
Right.
Yeah.
The other problem too is
and just one more bit. But even if they did bring in like a midfield player who was like a Junior Moreno level, and then they sold Vasquez sometime in like, mid to late January, and even if they brought in a Vasquez replacement kind of quickly, I still think there's a decent chance that Kubo ends up starting up top next to Bupenza anyway.
Interesting.
Because it's like, if that signing is coming from abroad, there's always that period of adjustment, and there's very few players, high profile international transfers, that they've brought in and started, their first game after only a couple of days training, except for like Obi, which like Obi was like, well, we have nobody else that plays his position on the roster.
Right. Necessity. Right. Yeah. The other issue too is that when you talk about getting that infusion of GAM, the infusion of GAM you're talking about is really only useful for trades within MLS. That's where its primary usage is going to be. Since it's a one-time infusion, it's not like you're going to have that to sign someone and then buy a contract down for multiple years using that. You're only going to have it for 1 year.
I think people don't appreciate that like, if you have a bunch of extra GAM, well, okay, that's like a trade asset. Because if you use that to defray somebody's like high salary or transfer fee this year, well, you're still going to be carrying their annualized salary and transfer fee next year, but without that extra GAM to buy it down.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure like everybody appreciates that, like, just because you have a bunch of GAM this year, that doesn't mean that it makes sense necessarily to bring in somebody on a high salary or who needs a transfer fee.
Right. The primary usage of GAM then is it is a asset to sell to other teams and trade for other teams and trade for other players. And it may well be the case that if you don't have it right now as teams are roster building and you don't get that infusion until like late January, some trades are just not going to be available at that point because teams have settled into what it is they want to do with their rosters, and everybody thinks they've got some kind of a chance, and you might not be able to make use of that GAM until later on in the year when teams have sort of shook out and see what it is that they've got going on with their rosters. So that GAM infusion, even if you get it in January, may not end up being useful until deeper into the summer when you can buy a distressed asset or buy a player from a team that's obviously going nowhere and looking to offload contracts and retool ahead of a new regime or something like that. So, yeah, I agree with your point, Grayson, that like the sale of Vasquez and Barreal, it's going to bring that infusion in. It's going to give some salary relief, especially with Vasquez, since he's going to open up a high-level salary spot. But like the GAM you're getting back might not be immediately useful as a item other than to hold for a future trade asset.
Or to sign Santi Arias again on another, 1-year deal with a 1-year option.
Which you could do,
right.
because Santi Arias is on a 1-year option right now. You could use this GAM to buy Arias' contract down, knowing that I only need to buy his contract down for this year because I don't have to pick his option up the next year.
Well, they declined his option. So
well, that's not Arias. I'm thinking, Sergio Santos is the player I was thinking.
Sergio Santos, sure.
Well, you could use that GAM to buy his contract down this year to create more room this year. But it just doesn't have the value in it because it's a one-time thing you can't roll over into next year.
Which is where you will see the amusing trade every once in a while of GAM for TAM, or in theory, you could do a GAM for GAM trade where you could trade 2024 GAM for 2025 GAM. So, and you probably lose something in the exchange rate, but such bizarre trades are in fact possible with our lovely, lovely D&D rules of MLS.
Which is, it's probably the best time to put this in the podcast at this point, just because we're going to be jumping around anyway. And that's that there was possibly some unfounded expectation that FC Cincinnati would get more flexibility with this year's roster by rule sets changing or rules changing with MLS. There was some unsourced stuff going around about a fourth DP or potentially a movement of the TAM threshold up to 2 million as opposed to like 1.6 million where it is right now, or even a change in the rules about U22 spots where you could get all teams would have access to 3 U22 initiative spots, regardless of whether or not you were using a young DP for your third designated player. And we got the news this week in MLS's PR-a-palooza news dump this week that there are no substantive changes coming to the rules and the roster rules and the salary rules for MLS. I think the only change they announced in terms of how salary and budgeting works is that they've now allowed you to get one of those GAM infusions for selling a designated player, which you previously weren't able to do. But there's no help on the horizon for FC Cincinnati in terms of, oh, well, the rules have changed to accommodate our Lord and Savior down in Miami and the idea of building better teams. So that's off the table. Yeah. The rules are what they are, which was tremendously disappointing, but just this league, man.
So, Grayson, let me pick at something you said earlier. At this moment, if the season started tomorrow, you're putting Kubo in that starting 11 over Santos if the decision came down to one of those two at striker.
Well, I think he needs to start at midfield.
I see.
Because who starts is in midfield?
In this case, you'd put Angulo then. So it would be Wobodo, Acosta, and Angulo as your starting midfield trio.
I would start.
I'd probably rather have Kubo as a striker in that scenario.
Yeah, I would start Kubo over Santos. I don't know if Santos was hampered by his injury last year. If he's got a long injury history, it doesn't really affect on a single game basis whether you would start him over Kubo. But especially later in the year, I just didn't see it in him as a starter.
Yeah.
And I feel like if he's got, unless he comes back and shows a lot more, I feel like if he's got any, real strength to add to the team, it's as a sub where he's using his speed against tired legs.
Yeah. Yeah.
He'd be the first person I used the one-time buyout on this offseason.
800. Well, that wasn't the question.
I know it wasn't the question.
It's certainly an answer to the question.
I'm just saying. All right, before we leave Yuya Kubo, I need a quick take from the two of you because you're both fans. More likely to occur, Yuya Kubo wins the Golden Boot, Jake Browning takes the Bengals and wins the Super Bowl.
Kubo wins the Golden Boot. I think it's more likely.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I don't know. Did you see that clip of him shouting at the camera, "You never should have fucking cut me"?
I liked that. I'll tell you.
I like that a
Pretty
lot.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys might be wrong on this one.
You heard it here first on this podcast. I said Browning was one of the greatest high school quarterbacks of all time. So, I called it.
I've seen this movie before. It was Drew Bledsoe that was hurt, not Joe Burrow. But
oh no! I was like, Nick Foles also comes to mind, so I won't get too excited just yet.
There's one player in NFL history to throw for as many yards with as high a completion percentage as Browning has had over his first 4 games. That's Jake Browning.
Hey, speaking of quarterbacks that shouldn't be doing as well as they are, but they are, looking at old Baker Mayfield getting
Heat the oven to 450 and let's bake, baby.
A perfect quarterback rating at Lambeau. He's one of only a handful of quarterbacks to ever do that. Aaron Rodgers has exactly one perfect quarterback rating game.
It's just the two of them, Rodgers and
they're
Baker
the only
Mayfield.
two?
Only two.
Wow.
Yeah.
So good.
This is the first Buccaneers regular season win in the winter in Lambeau ever.
That
I know that's
doesn't
not shocking.
surprise me.
That's not shocking in the slightest. Little horse shit franchise from Florida struggles in bad weather.
I'm not going to disparage, but
it only took 40 years of global warming to make this possible.
That's a good point. Bring on the winter schedule for soccer. It'll pan out in a few years anyway.
Thanks to our fossil fuel industry, winter in Lambeau just doesn't hit the same way as it did when I was a kid.
It's nice. You got to go up to Lambeau in December. It's nice out.
Yeah, it's beautiful this time of year.
Well, then, Chief, I go to you. We've I think successfully checked the Yuya Kubo box. Also, just if I could just get Kubo in a cowboy hat, just at some point, just whoever may be listening, I would like that.
I was actually thinking that what we need to do is, on the off chance that our relationship with the FC Cincinnati has improved to the point we can get players on this show. Although, Kevin, I think you might have been poisoning the well a little bit this week online. We'll get into that in segment 2. But if we ever get to the point where we have active players that are allowed to join this merry band of idiots, I want at least our first question, or at least our last question, one of the two, to be, tell us one interesting fact about Yuya Kubo.
Yes. I feel like we've asked a lot of former guys about GB. I'm fine with changing that to Kubo.
Yeah, tell me your best Yuya Kubo story. I want to build the legend.
We're gonna get a lot of stories like, he opened the door for me once at training.
That's fine. That's fine. He is a world-class door opener. Although I do fear that we ask this and we find out, oh yeah, in practice he tackles late all the time. He's the dirtiest motherfucker. It's like, no, cut that.
Nope. We don't need that out there in the world. No, Chief, I ask you, where would you like to go next?
I would love to go and talk about a player that you would literally die for, Kevin. We got word this week. I call this vindication because on this very podcast, on one of the first episodes we ever recorded, it was the two of us sitting with Grayson and lamenting the fact that FC Cincinnati did not draft one Kipp Keller. And how could FC Cincinnati have the audacity, given the porous defense and the poor backline play, not take this locked-on, surefire, week 1 starter, Kipp Keller? There was only one member of this crew that thought the Roman Celentano pick was clearly superior. That was you, Grayson. Take your flowers, take your victory lap here in a second. I want to note, too, that it didn't make us feel better, I don't think, that Kipp Keller was a day 1 starter for Austin, and they immediately kicked the shit out of us in game 1 to the tune of like 5-0, I think.
That was really rough.
Not great for your boy here. But we got word that better late than never, Kipp Keller is coming back back for the very first time to his rightful home of the FC Cincinnati. He's a Gary. Kevin, you said, I will die if FC Cincinnati does not select Kipp Keller in the Super Draft. How are you feeling right now? Alive, I hope?
Feeling alive. Feeling, in a lot of ways, invincible now that I've taken death off the table with Kipp Keller on the roster now, so that's good. I like that.
Spitting in the face of death.
No, this is great. I mean, We can talk about it. And I'm happy to play the character that Kipp Keller is the greatest center back of all time, and he will immediately walk in to this team. We no longer have a mascara-sized hole in this back line. We have a Kipp Keller-sized wall on our back line. But no, this is a very good move. This is one of those shrewd MLS moves that you look for with a Chris Albright as your GM, trading a third-round draft pick, which, look, I'll be the first one to say, hand up, I was wrong about the value of the super draft generally, but I think everybody can agree, the further away you get from those top 10, top 15 picks, the more of a crapshoot it well and truly becomes. And a third-round draft pick, we're at the point of that draft where most teams are passing, or at least a fair number of teams are passing on even taking a guy. FC Cincinnati turned that third-round draft pick into Kipp Keller, who was, as we discussed, a very highly regarded college prospect from St. Louis University. And it costs nothing to acquire him. And if he's terrible, so be it. He can go join an FCC2 team that is also terrible. But if he pans out, if we do believe the good coaching that is here in Cincinnati can improve him in some way, shape, or form, this could be a really, really, really clever pickup. And I see only upside here. There's no downside to signing Keller.
You know, it's funny that you just mentioned Baker Mayfield, because there is something in sports where it becomes very hard to outstink a first-round pick label or a first overall pick label or a top 5 pick label. Mm-hmm. And you see guys, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, you know, I'm sure Zach Wilson, when he gets cut by the Jets this offseason, will find a home solely based on the idea that somebody is like, I can fix that guy. I scouted him coming out of college. Whatever his problems are, we've got the people that can fix him. The talent is still there. The tape from college is still there. He's still Kipp Keller. And I can fix the problems that kept him from being truly successful at another stop. And to that point of where that's maybe not copium or hopium here in Cincinnati, we are talking about a coaching staff that has turned Ian Murphy from first-round draft pick into very serviceable MLS player. And that's all you need from Kipp Keller. You don't need him to fill the Yerson Mosquera-sized hole. He's not going to fill the Yerson Mosquera-sized hole. But if he is a competent MLS player, boy, wouldn't we have killed for that against Columbus, as we were desperately trying to play Tetris and Jenga at the same time to fill out our back line, missing Nick Hagland and Matt Miazga.
Yeah, so think about if we had like a right-footed Ian Murphy to play in the MLS Cup semifinals, or somebody a little taller than, or a little better in the air than Alvis Powell coming off the bench to play center back in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal against Inter Miami.
Famously, a game where jumping didn't matter.
Yeah. So I think that's like, I think that's the type of thing you would hope for with this signing, which is like, if like a really good case scenario is we end up with a player more or less as good as Ian Murphy as an option on the right side of the center back trio. Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think he was highly touted, you know, coming out of college. You know, FC Cincinnati's coaching staff is well aware of the struggles that he has had getting on the field in Austin. I don't think that's I don't think it's like a new data point to them. Right. And they still see him as somebody who can help them. I assume he's on a deal that doesn't hit the cap. So with the so I saw somebody I think, you know, ask like, well, why would Austin not pick up his option if he's good enough, you know, to make our team?
Right.
And I think what we saw, what I would players I would bring up are Johnny Nelson and Brett Halsey, who were Generation Adidas draft picks. And with Generation Adidas contracts, players get longer term guaranteed deals than normal draft picks, and they also get a higher initial salary that doesn't hit the team's salary budget. So you end up with like a low 6-figure contract versus making like reserve minimum, which is like $65,000.
Yeah.
And then when their option years come up, if you pick up that player's option, you're picking up their option at like a low 6-figure salary. That's now going to hit your salary budget because they're not subject to that Generation Adidas exception anymore.
Right.
So the option Austin was looking at was, do we decline his option and, risk losing him in the reentry draft? Or do we pick up his option, pay him a 6-figure salary, and have him take up a spot on our senior roster?
Right.
So what Chris Albright did, that was actually like quite a deft, low cost move, was when his option was declined, Chris Albright traded Austin that 3rd round draft pick, and then signed him to a first team deal with FC Cincinnati before the reentry draft. So rather than see if another team would pick him up in stage 1 or stage 2 of reentry, we just went ahead and signed him to the roster.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that his contract is going to be coming in at the senior minimum, and he won't be taking up salary budget space or be on the senior roster.
Right.
So I think this is going to end up looking like a very, like Kevin, like you guys said, like a low cost, no risk move that doesn't need a whole lot to pay off.
Right.
No.
Right. I mean, like you had like Johnny Nelson coming in, he started, a dozen or so games and was able to help the team make the playoffs as a useful piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
We don't need anything more than that from this roster spot.
No.
Right.
And that it was missing all of last year. This particular roster spot was missing. So it's value add at this point, assuming they can find someone that's a starter level center back to replace Yerson Mosquera, which they absolutely need to do. And assuming that Hagelin comes back from injury successfully, which no reason to think that won't happen. But yeah, they've needed that 5th center back forever. And especially if they're not going to switch formations, if they're going to keep playing 3 at the back, you need to have 5 center backs to do that. And if this guy is the 5th center back and all it cost to get him was a 3rd round pick and a senior minimum salary, mission accomplished for a dude that actually has minutes starting in this league.
Yeah, and I would also add that I don't know a lot about how Austin plays. Okay. But it does look like they typically run out 4-man backline, which means playing 2 center backs. And so that means what he was asked to do for Austin is going to be very different than what he'll be asked to do for us in our, I assume, sticking with that 3 center back system.
Yeah.
But it just fits the personnel that we have, especially if we bring in, another starter as, the Mosquera type replacement.
Yeah, exactly. And as Chief said, that's what this team needs, right? A 5th, even a 6th center back off the bench that you could trust when that's called upon. Well, speaking of bringing in that Mosquera level starter, we also got rumor this week, got word, there was a rumor of one Miles Robinson visiting TQL Stadium, therefore visiting FC Cincinnati on the first day of free agency. For those who are somehow not aware of Miles Robinson, he's a very, very, very good center back, one of the better center backs in MLS, a U.S. men's national team starter, probably is now the third center back on that depth chart right now, but is very, very close to being a full-time starter for the U.S. men's national team. He is eligible and is re-signing. Essentially, Atlanta could re-sign him to a DP deal if they wanted to. Given how MLS free agency restrictions work, nobody else in MLS can offer him a DP salary, but you can get him on that sort of max TAM deal. So could be a very expensive piece, but would not be a designated player, which is useful because we don't have any of those spots. However, given that he is a free agent, he is also more than happy to go sign with anybody that'll take him in Europe come January. That does seem to be where his original intentions lied. However, if you allow me to continue to rant here for a moment, to sort of spell out the theory of the case for why Miles Robinson might make this move. He's already shown that he can get U.S. men's national team call-ups while playing in Major League Soccer. FC Cincinnati has, as we all know, some fantastic training grounds, a very nice stadium that plays on natural grass, something that Atlanta does not do. A coaching staff that is very familiar with the U.S. men's national team setup with Noonan and, for the moment, Kenny Arena there, and would be potentially playing with teammates such as Matt Miazga and Brandon Vasquez. Again, for the time being, potentially, maybe, sort of. There's a lot of reasons why he would do that. The other piece of it is, too, we say, like, in the abstract, go to Europe. In a lot of people's minds, that means like sign for a London Premier League team or Bayern or PSG, but that could just as easily be a mid-table Netherlands team, and they can't usually pay about as much as a max TAM salary. So all of a sudden, the salary competition is a little tighter than you would have originally suspected. You throw all that together, there's a decent case for Miles Robinson to come sign here in Cincinnati. But I don't know.
I mean, also, he's one of Greg's people.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of Berhalter. Berhalter has already called him into the national team. He called him into the national team when he was with Atlanta United. I think there is if you're not one of Greg's people or you haven't already made your national team debut, sometimes you need to go to Europe to get attention. Mm-hmm. If you're already getting attention and Berhalter, I don't want to get on a Berhalter rant. This isn't a Berhalter episode, but suffice it to say, Greg has his guys, and he's got guys that he likes. He's got players that are part of his system that he's bought in on. Miles Robinson's already been bought. He's already bought in on Miles Robinson. Miles doesn't need to make the move to Europe to get the attention and get on the national team radar. He's fine where he is. He doesn't need to make that consideration. My question is to both of you, assuming FC Cincinnati has the ability to pull this off, that Miles is like, yes, I would like to sign here. You are my first choice in free agency. I want to be a max TAM player. What do we think, or does anyone have a problem with the idea then that FC Cincinnati will have two max TAM players both on the back line playing center back? Are we overcommitting resources to the back line in this situation?
My argument's no, but Grayson, do you have a different thought?
My argument's also no. I'm not too concerned about having two max TAM players on the back line if Albright's not concerned about it.
Fair.
So, and I think about what our team would look like with Miles Robinson and Matt Miazga.
Miles Robinson, Matt Miazga, and Obina Nwobodo. I mean, that's a lockdown defense. You almost play park the bus as your first strategy choice at that point.
That's a defense that could potentially just be a two-man back line as well. Right now, there's a lot of covering for guys, I don't know, inability to be left on isolation like that. Miazga is just about the only guy we'd trust there. Mosquera could have been that guy, but one, he's no longer here, and
he's also like a toddler. Like he's 12 years old. He had a
habit of running forward, and I imagine he was given that freedom and that permission. But Robinson's a guy you could put in a 2-man back line and trust to have that discipline to hold down his spot. And yeah, especially given where the other money is, right? So 2 DP midfielders, a DP striker. Yeah, like center back is exactly where you should be dumping a lot of money there, especially given how, and we'll see new salary numbers, but I'm assuming Roman isn't suddenly one of the best paid goalkeepers in the league. And we've had a lot of money on this team tied up in backup strikers, backup midfielders. What you're doing in this case is, in theory, if you want to like take last year's roster and move around contracts, you give Yuya Kubo's contract last year to Miles Robinson, and you give Mosquera's contract to Yuya Kubo. Fine, great, like that's fine. That team just got better, I think, and the salary's in the right spots. So,
and I think Miles Robinson, at least with the national team, has played on the left side. Of the center back pairing with I think usually Walker Zimmerman. Mm-hmm. But if he's comfortable playing on the left, that is your Mosquera replacement, right?
Yeah.
And I think slotting in Robinson for Mosquera today is an upgrade.
Yeah.
Assuming Robinson comes back healthy.
That is the sort of tricky part of this, is he is coming back from a pretty devastating injury. Is it fair to say he has a little bit of an injury bug as well in his history? I feel like he is generally dealing with something. Although
he does have a bit of an injury history, but he was playing, in Atlanta.
Right. Where
he was injured for most of 2022, right?
Yeah,
he got injured right before.
Season. Yeah,
didn't he get injured like right before the World Cup in 22, and then he missed most of 23 because he got injured again.
Yeah. Which again, probably real excited about not playing on turf if you can help it in the near future, right? Here's a potential downside: Copa America and other U.S. men's national team call-ups. If he is as good as advertised, that means he's probably not available for us and MLS.
Oh man!
As far as we know,
Miazga and Miles Robinson both out. I mean, it sucks that Berhalter's back. Miazga's not going anywhere.
It's true.
He might have to storm his way back onto the field, but
yeah.
All right, that would be bad. Although maybe, I mean, shit. If you sign Miles Robinson and there's a lockdown defense in Cincinnati with a pairing of Miazga and Miles Robinson, if you're Greg Berhalter, don't you look at that and just think, I mean, I could just import that wholesale to the national team if it's working in MLS.
I understand, like, a lot of QSMNTers are, always upset when an American doesn't immediately go abroad to, a third division German side or whatever. But in the abstract, as a fan of the U.S. men's national team, I am psyched as hell at the idea that we would have 2 potential national team talents playing together for the same club team. Like, that is
increasing
what a lot
chemistry.
of national teams want. Yeah, exactly.
That's why the German team's always so good. Half the roster is on Bayern Munich, and they're playing together every week.
And the other half plays for Dortmund, and half the Spanish squad plays for Real Madrid, and the other half plays for Barcelona, right? Like, it pans out a lot of times when you can do that.
Have we talked in this show ever at all about how fucking insufferable U.S. men's national team Twitter is? Whenever an American is looking at signing with MLS, there is inevitably, in the first response, some asshole that has like an American flag as part of his name with something like USMNT American flag takes or USMNT American flag battle. Like some horse shit like this. They're all like a member of some shitty AO chapter, and they've got a blue check mark they paid fucking Elon for, and they are mad as hell in the replies that this person would ever hold themselves back by going to MLS. And this is why the national team, shut up. I hate these people. I hate them. They're the same pro-rel truthers that are in the replies. I'll never watch MLS because it's not based on sporting merit and the games don't mean anything and they don't play hard. And I would rather be, him go to Dortchen, Machen, Globen, third division Bundesliga 3, because that's where it means something. It's like the SEC. It just means more over there.
Right.
And these players will develop because of the sheer force of it means more over in Europe. And it's the worst aspects of American soccer. And I feel bad for players like Miles Robinson because, look, if somebody mentions LeBron James online and a narrative starts about LeBron James, LeBron's got 50 million followers. He has to go looking for his mentions to find out when people are mad at him.
Right.
Soccer is still small enough that I'll bet Miles Robinson knows that he's having shit talked about him online for choosing to stay in the United States. And that sucks. It sucks that an American who has the audacity to say, I would like to live in the country I was born in. I would like to be a citizen and a resident of my home country. I would like to play my sport in my home country. I would like to help grow the game in my home country. And I want to represent my own home country on the highest stage of international competition. And these dickbag fans online you're selling out and you're selling out America by not going and challenging yourself in the 5th division of the Norwegian Premier League or wherever the hell they want them to go.
Yeah. It's also just an inability to recognize where we are in 2023 in world football, which is MLS is undoubtedly a top 10 league in the world and offering huge salaries for the high-end American talent in the US. MLS is in a lot of ways an equal, if not way more attractive destination for these guys than mid-table Portuguese clubs, mid-table anywhere in Europe outside of potentially Italy, Spain, and England. I mean, even Germany is a stretch, I think, at this point with some of these clubs. And then, you throw in Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, the Scandinavian countries, Scotland. It's not great there. It's not good football outside of the one or two super clubs that and these guys aren't getting paid that much there. I don't know.
Yeah, so PSV, I think, is the club that was linked most directly with Miles Robinson. And something I don't think people fully appreciate is Miles Robinson is going to be 27 next season. Matt Miazga was 27 when he came back to MLS. Okay.
Right.
This guy's not a young prospect anymore. Okay.
Right.
So if he goes to PSV, probably takes less money based on what PSV pays,
uproots his life to do it. He's never lived in Europe before.
So he goes to PSV, uproots his whole life, goes to an entirely new country, new system, new league, doesn't speak the language, takes a pay cut, is going to have to probably, he's going to have to probably hope that he's able to break into the team immediately quickly and shine in that league. Because the Premier League is not going to become calling to some 29-year-old who's only just started, playing full 90s for PSV. Right. His window for parlaying that PSV is a massive club.
Right.
Largely though, these days driven by their ability to find young players and move them on at large profits to bigger clubs. PSV, they're in a great spot in the Eredivisie right now. There's great opportunities for some Americans who are really shining in that league at the moment. And, PSV would run away with MLS.
Yes.
Like, there's no doubt in my mind, right? But we're talking about we're not talking about like an abstract issue here. You know, we're talking about Miles Robinson's specific circumstance.
Right.
And, you know, maybe he does decide that he wants to try his hand with PSV in Europe and just really wants to give himself the only chance he would ever have to like maybe parlay into the Premier League or the Bundesliga and play at that level. But it's not an obvious choice for somebody who is looking at, I'm getting into like kind of the middle of my career and my earnings window. And I need to be thinking about not just, you know, playing for the best team. I need to be thinking about, you know, how am I going to maximize the value of my career?
Right.
And it's very possible for a guy like Miles Robinson, who, because Atlanta was not willing to part with him, didn't get that chance to go to Europe at 22. It's very possible that what he decides makes the most sense for him is to sign a very, very generous max TAM contract with the team in MLS. And if you're looking at signing with MLS teams who are all capped at what they're able to pay an MLS American player, I think FC Cincinnati has to be seen as a competitive team for American talent at the TAM level with anybody else in the league.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, you know, when he saw his name on the side of TQL Stadium, when he saw himself on the scoreboard, presumably, and he was visiting was he thinking back to that 2-0 game that he started and played almost the full game of in TQL Stadium against Mexico in World Cup qualifying in November 2021, which was like the best atmosphere that anybody would have.
Wasn't his first time in the training facility either.
Yeah, you know, it's the best atmosphere that the national team had played the entire World Cup qualifying. Or was maybe he thinking about that game against Canada that he played in TQL Stadium, hearing the fans go crazy when Brandon Vasquez was warming up and getting ready to come on.
Chanting, "We want Brandon" the entire game.
And, you know, is he thinking, you know, I'm going to make $1.6 million a year and get supported and celebrated in a way that, yeah, you'll get at other teams, but not every other team.
Right. Not every other team. And as you said, an immediate competitor. You're immediately in Champions League. You are a favorite to win the title next year, or right up there. I think
among the favorites. Yeah.
Yeah. The last chart I saw put us at, I think, 4th or 5th favorites to win MLS Cup next year. The Supporter Shield winning team, a coaching staff that is very capable and already well proven at coaching defenses and getting the most out of defenders. Yeah. Man, like, this argument makes a lot of sense.
And also, too, it's like, if he goes over to someplace like PSV and it doesn't work, it can only hurt his status with the national team. If he is out of the rotation, if he's not getting regular minutes, his status with the national team is locked on right now in MLS. If that's his primary concern, is that he wants to play in a World Cup on American soil, keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to go out there and take a risk going someplace where you are not guaranteed the type of minutes and the type of play time that you would get as a max TAM player in MLS. You would have to fight for your spot at a club like PSV, and there would always be someone right up behind you. And that's the whole mythos of why is Europe better? Because you're always fending someone off for your spot. Yeah, well, sometimes that doesn't work out. And not always because they're the better player. It can be because of bad injury luck. You have bad injury luck at PSV, someone else has your spot. You get injured in MLS, you're still a max TAM player when you come back. you're getting your fucking spot back. Like, that's just a reality of how this league works with a salary cap.
There are guys definitely who, you would take them as a starter with the national team, even if they're not getting regular minutes over the next man up, for sure. But the center back position is pretty crowded.
It's very deep.
If he starts, like, if any of these guys start missing time, or they go to a situation where they're not playing regularly, it's really hard to look at, let's say Miles Robinson at PSV is sitting on the bench. It's really hard to look at him and say, yeah, I'm going to start you over Chris Richards,
right,
who's getting regular minutes with Crystal Palace.
Right.
Or Tim Ream, or even a Walker Zimmerman.
Or even Walker Zimmerman. Yeah.
Day in and day out. Yep.
And I want this notion to go away that if you are an American soccer player and you don't want to pick your life up and move to Europe, not speaking the language, not having any exposure to the culture, that somehow makes you a bad person. How many people of these fat basement dwelling slobs online would pick up and move to Europe tomorrow, knowing nothing about where they were going to, just because, that's the way you advance your career? None of these people have the balls to do that.
Right.
None of these people have the gumption to just up and move to Norway or Denmark or someplace where they've never been before, just because, that's what you're supposed to do in your career. Like, what they are projecting onto these American players sucks. And you know what? As someone who does root for the national team, I think it would be rad if more of these guys played together, like we were talking about, on clubs like Cincinnati or on clubs like LAFC or whatever, that we had a national team contingent that was over here in the States playing together on a regular basis. And when they need to come together to do training, we don't have to ask questions like, should we have our training center based in Europe because that's where all our best players play? That's dumb. That shouldn't be the long-term goal for American soccer. It just shouldn't.
Right.
And I want Americans playing. I love that Christian is scoring all these goals from Milan. I want to see Americans playing for these top teams. But, when PFOC was scoring a bunch of goals at Young Boys, that didn't do anything for me.
No.
I mean, it's not. Yeah, I like that he was scoring goals, but that wasn't any more impressive. It was less impressive, frankly, to me than Brendan Vasquez bagging 18 in MLS.
Well, we saw it with Yuya Kubo's own career. You can take a prolific young boy striker, drop them in MLS, and turns out they're a maybe average defensive midfielder.
Or a Golden Boot winner. We're going to find out this year.
Who knows? Either one is a possibility. Pointed this out online. I'll point it out again here. An individual by the name of Gerard Nijkamp currently has an Eredivisie club at 7th in their table right now. So please don't tell me how much greater the competition is in the Netherlands versus day in and day out in MLS. But
could he do it on a rainy day in Charlotte? The answer is absolutely not.
Right. No, he could not. But no, the Copa America will be here in the U.S. The World Cup will be here in the U.S. At a certain point, there is value to already be playing, having, your playing time in the U.S. already. It's a smoother transition. And hey, not for nothing, you take the age out of the equation. Very similar arguments for one Alvaro Barreal. So I know the club would benefit quite a bit from selling him, but a lot of these things also apply to Barreal. We've seen Argentinian guys get national team call-ups exclusively for their MLS form and their MLS contributions.
But the age does matter in this argument, where Barreal is the age where he can make that move. And he's in his window. If he doesn't do it now, he's committing pretty much long-term to being an MLS lifer if he doesn't make the move right now.
Yeah, Barreal's looking at Barreal's in a position where he can see, 2-3 steps up.
Right.
Whereas Robinson,
it would have to be quick.
Man, you'd have to have a real quick.
And that's hard for a center back.
Jump.
If you're not a goal scorer and you're not an attacker, it's really hard to flash. It just is.
Especially when the move is presumably right now, you'd be joining mid-season. So if you're joining a good team, they probably have 3 really good center backs already. So
the other thing you think about with Robinson is the type of Premier League team he would be joining in a couple of years is going to be a team that's going to be doing a lot of defending.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that they're going to be looking at somebody who's playing on PSV and they're just running over the entire league and they're holding the ball the whole time and he's not being tested really. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's the profile that you're looking for if you're Brentford.
Yeah.
And you're fighting for your life every game.
Right. You want that center back that is saving the bottom of the end table, team. That, my God, this center back is single-handedly keeping this team alive. That was
Obina Woboto.
Exactly where I was going. That was the argument for bringing in Obi.
And the thing with MLS is basically all of the teams still do a lot of defending.
Yeah.
Even the teams at the top of the table, they still do a lot of defending.
The salary disparity, even on bad teams, is so heavily favoring attackers that all the teams in the league are top heavy, and you have better attackers facing off against worse defenders.
It really does make an argument for MLS center backs and MLS defenders being an undervalued asset in the international market. Because if you put up an incredible defense in MLS, if you're a Matt Miazga or Yerson Mosquera, and Yerson Mosquera was able to put this defense, to play in this defense where he has Matt Miazga, a Chelsea washout next to him, and Ian Murphy, just some dude that was available in the super draft, that makes you a superstar if you're able to play under those conditions.
Right. A lot of MLS teams have I'll be charitable and say a bottom end of the Premier League table attack. Thiago Almada is playing for Atlanta, could easily walk into a lot of Premier League teams starting lineups. That's what all these guys are facing every single day. Polish and Hungarian international strikers every single week.
Miguel Almiron. MLS defenders had to play Martinez and Almiron, all the time. Even San Jose has a Christian Espinoza.
Right.
Dallas, has some really good attackers. Charlotte's, got Swiderski. Yeah, Nick Hagland was man guarding Benteke.
Right. It's just so funny that all of these teams are able to put together really strong attacking, talent against these defenders. And every year, if I was in the Premier League, I'd be looking at who was the best MLS defense, who's the best defender on that team. I don't know. They can't be that expensive, right? I know Seattle and Orlando had really solid defenses this year. Kick the tires on one of those.
Yeah,
guys.
but if you were some team in the championship, you wouldn't toss FC Cincinnati a $2 million offer for Ian Murphy, or if you were at the lower level of the Premier League. This guy held his own against guys that are pretty good strikers. A flyer for $1 million. Why not?
Right. You're spending so much more.
We take it.
Right. Oh, my God. He'd beg them to take Ian Murphy for $2 million.
Yeah. Carl Linder would drive him to the airport in his Bentley. That.
We could go turn that $2 million into an MLS All-Star in a trade somewhere else. That is how much, of a difference that much money would make to an MLS side like that. There we are. Do we have anything else on? Oh my God. We've got so much more. I'm going to go next in terms of bringing in talent, acquiring talent. And since we brought up Ian Murphy, the MLS Super Draft presented by Audi, discussed by the Postcast, is coming up on Tuesday. For most people listening to this, tomorrow. FC Cincinnati picks. Do we have the dead last pick? I actually did not look it up to see.
I don't care.
I think we're dead last because of the standing.
I can cut this conversation real short. I don't give a fuck.
Oh no, we don't. Crew has the last pick, then LAFC, then us.
Okay, so they're going in MLS Cup standings.
Yeah.
Then.
Which is a problem anyway. But no, I don't care. I'm sure we'll take someone, and I'm sure that there will be pundits that will hate the pick, that have never watched this person play, and person that do you remember we were going to try and make ourselves out and as an expert and just sort of pump somebody's tires that was playing in Division 3? just to see if we could get somebody drafted. We got to put a pin in that and come back to next year and do that.
Yes.
Is there a Generation Adidas class even
announced yet?
Announced?
I don't know if they've already announced like if individual players have said anything. But yeah. I'm glancing at this eligible players list and nobody has Generation Adidas written next to them, though I don't know if they would at this point. Long story short, you really just want a Generation Adidas player. There's usually like anywhere from 8 to 15 GA players available for one given draft. They go pretty early because they tend to be one, the best players in the draft, and two, on really good contracts if you do end up getting one of those good players. So we're probably not getting a GA player. Never say never, as some guys slip down there. But other than that, yeah, just hope for the best. I don't know. I don't watch college soccer. I just assume Albright is going to do a good job here because between Ian Murphy and Roman Celentano, we've been pretty good at the draft. So let's do it again, baby.
Run it back. Yeah, no, I don't. Anyone that says they're an expert in the MLS Super Draft is lying to you. So don't believe them.
There's just so much.
Yeah. And most of these games aren't televised. So you're like combing through YouTube for highlights and you're a total sicko if you're watching all of them and focusing on like one player. So
right.
Let me know when we draft them. I'll back them to the end and hopefully we end up with one person who can help make FCC2 less of a dumpster fire.
Yeah. And I think Kevin, you got a little bit of a bad rap on the whole super draft thing.
I do.
The way that I understood your point wasn't that there's no value to be had in the super draft.
Correct. There are good players.
It's that spending any time trying to learn all about these players before the draft and sorting out who might be good on a specific player level and who won't be and like how they profile and what they're going to do.
Right.
That's a total fool's errand.
Yeah.
Nobody's good at it. At least that I've seen. Like,
right.
We saw, all the MLS pundits slamming us over getting Celentano and Murphy instead of Keller. And now look, we got Keller too. So, but
joke's on them.
Joke's on them. But like, it's just a lot of these, if you go back through Generation Adidas, most of these guys flame out.
Yeah.
Like a good point, maybe not most, but like most of them don't become stars. The ones that do stick around the league tend to just be role players. And a lot of them are in USL in 3 years.
Yeah.
Or out of soccer.
Yeah.
And
most of the good examples are from years ago. You go, oh, Darlington Nagbe was drafted. It's like, yeah, in like 2003 or whatever.
Yeah, but like Jack Elliott was a 4th round pick, I think.
Right.
And they don't even have 4 rounds anymore in the MLS Super Draft.
No.
And it's not like if Philly knew that they were getting Jack Elliott, the player that Jack Elliott is today,
you draft him first.
They would have drafted him in the 2nd round or 1st round.
Right.
They weren't like waiting around in the 4th round. Like, oh, this guy's going to be an MLS best 11 level defender, but nobody else knows this. So we're going to wait until the 4th round to draft
us
him.
Because we passed on him. It's like, oh yeah, no, we definitely knew Brock Purdy was going to win MVP this year. That's why we waited till the last pick of the draft to take him.
Right. I mean, it's what you get in the 4th round of the draft is luck. Right. And honestly, what you get in the 1st round of the draft is luck.
Right.
And the reason I was high on the Roman Celentano pick initially is I went back through the Generation Adidas list and I saw, you know what? It looks like the most accurate position that they are is with goalkeeper, because the vast majority of these guys, if they're not kicking field goals in the NFL, have become at least like regular starters at some point in their careers.
Right. Which is all you can ask for at this point with the draft.
Right. And you look at who it just felt like the goalkeeper had the biggest hit rate of like useful MLS level player.
Right.
Whether like a backup or a really great player like, Andre Blake or Brad Guzan, I think it was also Generation Adidas.
Yeah.
Or just, like a Zach McMath type who's been fine over the years. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're going to draft somebody, and you know what? I'm going to love it.
Yeah, that'll be our guy to the ends of the earth. Yeah,
Right. If it's not a striker, we revolt.
There we go. Yeah, do we have any we'll in honor of my Kipp Keller, I will literally die if we do not draft him. Do we want a hard line? I'm not saying you have to kill yourself if this doesn't happen, but is there a hard demand you have out of the draft? Chief, I'll take your we have to draft a striker or you'll be pissed. I think that's a good one.
We need depth at the striker position. This team is ruined if we don't get striker depth in the super draft.
I like it. Grayson, do you have a demand to make of Chris Albright here?
Yeah, my demand is a left winger.
Ooh.
With the idea that player will be converted to a left wing back.
I like that.
I think that's where you find, I think that may be an angle that this team could have, is getting talented young wingers with the idea that, okay, you were like the best winger at like the college or the next pro or academy level. You're a wing back in MLS. It's like you draft like a top college shortstop and hope he's a moderately competent first baseman at the Major League Baseball level.
Right. Exactly. Here's one for you. I will make the demand that we draft an international player. So here's my thought. One, we don't use any international slots, so might as well use one here. Then two, I think in general, the best soccer talent, young soccer talent in this country is in a lot of different academies. And I think a lot of them are in MLS academies. I think that's where MLS teams are dedicating a lot of their young scouting talent. And that's where they're putting it into feeding in their academies. And that basically only works with domestic players because they have to live either in your region or you're scouting other domestic academies to then recruit that player to your academy. But the international player who comes from Germany to play college soccer because getting an American degree makes a lot of sense, not on a lot of people's radars in terms of the academy, shows well in college soccer. I think that's a good draftable prospect. I might be talking myself into Calvin Harris. But that's not a demand. Go get an international player. That would be good.
Striker, or we revolt.
Good international striker that we convert their position. That's Calvin Harris, guys. I think we're making the argument to draft Calvin Harris. He's fine. He did that stare down to Noonan during the Chivas friendly. So that was good.
Good for him.
I like that. Is there anything else for FC? Oh my God, there's one big one we got to talk about the FC Cincinnati. The CONCACAF Champions Cup draw was this past week, and we have an opponent. We might even have a window for dates to be playing, but FC Cincinnati was drawn in to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, not the Champions League. They've rebranded. It is entirely a knockout tournament. There is no group stages, which is, I think,
I think we've talked about this. I still think we should call it Champions League.
I agree.
I'm good with that. All right. I'm in. Champions League. We're there.
I refuse to let the...
Good. Their handle on Twitter is the Champions. I mean, they've already stolen the song from the Champions League. The only lyric.
I refuse to let there be a Champions Cup and a Campeones Cup.
Yeah. And a Carolina Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
Too confusing.
Champions League. The Civilian Conservation Corps was already CCC, but also CCC makes me think CCCP, which is
commies.
Un-American.
Right.
Un-American.
So.
All right, Champions League it is. Well, we are there, and FC Cincinnati drew Cavalier.
Sponsored by Toyota Bank, as covered by the postcast.
Yes.
Yep.
And
Scotiabank.
Scotiabank. Yeah. Not Dublin Scioto Bank.
I've only read it. I've never actually been there.
When I watch Liga MX, they go Scotiabank, so maybe that. No, we drew Cavalier, Jamaican team. What's great is everything online says that their club name is Cavalier Football Club, Cavalier Football Club, Cavalier Football Club. Their crest, Cavalier Soccer Club. So, I don't know. So that's great. They look to play in a 3,000 person stadium.
I think we should call it. Oh, never mind. Keep going.
Oh, well, the stadium is literally built into, and then therefore next to another stadium that holds 10,000 people. I just really love that. And just two circles right next to each other. They probably share some facilities, but one's got stands and the other one really doesn't.
Is there like a better team that plays in the bigger stadium and there's just like the little brother?
Isn't it it's like the Jamaican national team stadium, isn't it?
It's the Jamaican national team stadium.
They don't play all the time. Can't they let Cavalier play in the nice stadium?
You would
padlock the fucking thing when Jamaica's national team isn't playing?
I have to double check. I think the nicer one also has the track around it. Like I think it is the national.
All those
stadium.
stadiums in CONCACAF have the track around it. Like that's it's a defining feature of CONCACAF is there's a running track around the stadium and they have people in riot shields on the corner kicks to stop piss bottles from being thrown at people.
It's what makes this region so great.
Yeah.
I really like their Wikipedia article because it says the club is known for producing top quality youth teams and has won over 40 domestic titles. I'm pretty sure that those 40 domestic titles are for the youth team. They've only ever won 2 senior national titles. One in the 80s and then one in 2021, which is probably how they found their way somehow qualifying all the way to this version of the Champions League. Glance at their roster.
Anything can be a domestic title. They could have like a 2-person tournament with like some other team in Jamaica and they can be claiming title after title.
That's true. Well, it's also, to that point, kind of embarrassing that they've only won 2. So yeah, I don't know. I did a quick glance at their roster as it's constructed at the moment. I didn't see anybody that we would know or have any MLS connections. I'm sure there's somebody that I missed, but a couple of guys have got caps for the Jamaican national team. That seems to be about it. Almost exclusively Jamaicans on their team. They only had 2 international players. And according to Jeff over at CST, they're the worst team in the competition. So that's good. That's probably the team you want to draw.
usually when Cavaliers play in a knockout style tournament, they're losing to the worst team in the tournament, not winning the tournament.
Zing. I don't know. Is there any thoughts on this? This is nice. This is cool. This was fun.
I mean, I feel good for the staff and players of FC Cincinnati that of all the destinations they had as potential options. I mean, you're looking at them doing the ping pong ball thing online, switching their hand around, showing the empty hand like they're dealing at a blackjack table in Vegas. And you had to know that there were guys on the FC's roster that were like just anywhere but Hamilton or Calgary, Canada, or someplace further north in winter. And instead it's a trip to Jamaica. That's, kind of keen, right?
Yeah, it's nice. I will say, if you were looking to go to an away game, Jamaica's fine, sure. I mean, it's really high murder rate and all that jazz. But
where is it?
I mean, fair point.
Great bobsled country.
Of course.
Feel the rhythm, feel the ride. Come on, Jamaica, it's bobsled time.
The best sport to bet on yourself to getting or in the neighborhood of the best sport to be betting on yourself to get a gold medal. Should FC Cincinnati move on beyond Cavalier, as they are going to be very much expected to do so, their likely next opponent would be one Monterrey from Liga MX, one of the most gorgeous stadiums in all of the world. So, I don't know. If you're budgeting for an away day, maybe look at Monterrey and hope we just get out of the first round, because that would be a much nicer stadium. Should we get past Monterrey, we would more than likely be playing the winner of Nashville and Inter Miami. So have fun with that potential laying out of the bracket.
So as we sit here, how many empanadas do we need to sell, or how many shirts do we need to sell to get an all-expense paid trip for the postcast crew to go to Jamaica in February? That's all I care about.
I think we just need to apply for credentials from CONCACAF and see if there isn't a travel stipend for international media.
I guarantee that there is someone at CONCACAF or at one of their sponsors that, like, they're desperate for people to care about this tournament. They're desperate. They've rebranded it. They want this to be on par, I think, with, they want it to be the domestic version of the Champions League over in Europe. It's never going to be that way. I feel like there has to be someone that we can con into saying, oh, we have a huge influential reach in the Midwestern part of the United States. Please give us money and accommodations and access to go do live content from down at this match. So that has to exist out there, right?
There's only one way to find out, and that's to speculate on this podcast.
How do these influencers do this? Where, like, all of a sudden they're being sent places and they get to make money. I want to be like that.
I don't think Jamaica has a sufficiently terrible human rights record for us to be able to qualify for getting payments to go there.
I'm sure there's something they want to paper over that we can help with.
I'm not going to speculate on what that might be.
Yeah.
Neither am I, but I'm sure it's there.
I'm good.
I'll say this. Anybody from Jamaica, I'm interested in learning more about your policies and your vision for your country.
I would love to know more about where Jamaica sees itself as part of the global economy in the next 15 to 25 years, or any odd projects that you want, maybe to tell about, to talk to a podcast about.
If anybody wants to tell me about, like, some misconceptions people hold about Jamaica and, the government of Jamaica, or I don't know, companies in Jamaica, the distribution of land in Jamaica, anything that people have a message that they want to tell me that they think, I think people think this, but actually the truth is different. I'm all ears.
Talk to us, baby.
Many people have said recently that Jamaica, I've heard this around the Cincinnati area and the Midwest in general. I've heard many people are saying that Jamaica has some bottom tier beaches and that they would much rather go to other destinations in the Caribbean and Central America, and even here in the United States. So I don't, unlike my father, I don't make the news. I just report the news. I would be willing to go, and I would be willing to disabuse my fellow countrymen and my fellow Midwesterners of that notion by maybe if I was shown what the beaches of Jamaica looked like and could rate and review them for an episode of Away Days. The hit series.
I mean,
the hit episode.
It does require probably 2 episodes to start calling it a series.
Well, no better place to start an episode 2 than Jamaica.
And if they wanted, pay money for Dr. Kopp to have an episode there
on location,
ooh,
that's on the table as well.
Dr. Kopp tries to get some time away. It gets roped into solving another thing.
That's something that happens, by the way. Like, countries will, like, pay TV shows to, like,
be there,
do an episode there.
Yeah.
That was the original show, Hawaii 5-0. It was just because the producers wanted to con whatever network it was into paying for them to live on Hawaii to film television shows. So they pitched an entire TV show where the central premise was that it was set in Hawaii. What a great scam.
It was similar to Adam Sandler's entire film career, which was, I just get all of my friends to go to Hawaii. I cast the most beautiful woman that could conceivably play my love interest, and we just knock out movie after movie with the same formula. Well done. Well,
if the Jamaican tourism industry or the Jamaican sports industry or any sort of industry in Jamaica is interested in educating the population of the United States about their fine country, or indeed, if anyone at CONCACAF, has some extra money lying around in an apartment for one of their pets that they're looking at providing,
hit us up.
The postcast, the DMs are open. I would be willing, on behalf of our wonderful sponsors, I would be willing to trade a couple of T-shirts from Cincy Shirts, or maybe a nice box of frozen empanadas for all access pass to the Champions League, as well as airfare and hotel accommodations at a 3.5 or 4-star or better hotel.
Yeah. Oh, it's just the offer's on the table. All right. So
I have a Bonvoy account and a SkyMiles account. We can make this happen.
Let's roll, baby. Is there anything else we want to touch on with CCC? The Champions League?
CCL.
CCL? Are we going to do a full preview like we did for Leagues Cup ahead of CCL at some point?
Maybe not.
Yes. We'll see how much money we get.
Maybe not.
Well, let's see. Half of the teams are from Major League Soccer, so that's immediately not fun. But yeah. Other than that, there's an entire part of this where Houston and St. Louis play each other. The winner gets Columbus Crew. It's just like, why? Why?
Yeah, it's like, what are we doing here?
It's so stupid.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Speaking of what are we doing here with cup tournaments?
Should we move on over to part 2, where I've got some ranting to do? I'm sure other people have some feelings. Let's do it. We'll leave FC Cincinnati here, although I'm sure they'll come up. And in part 2, yeah, we're gonna talk MLS's decision with the Open Cup. So head on over there. This episode is also brought to you by Cincy Shirts. Look, you know Cincy Shirts. You love Cincy Shirts. They've been with FCC from the beginning, and we here at the Postcast, we're just huge fans of their work. They were very early sponsors of the Postcast here, and we have always enjoyed their work. If you head on over to CincyShirts.com, that's Cincy with a Y, shirts.com, and check out using the promo code ThePostCincy, all one word, all caps, you will get 10% off your order, and you let them know that we sent you. Like, they have MLS and MLSPA licensed FCC gear available online and at their 2 retail locations in Hyde Park and Fort Mitchell. If they don't have your size on the shelf, they can print you one on the spot. That is a fantastic feature and something that I have used as well. So again, special thank you to Cincy Shirts. Head on over to their website or check the link down below in the description for the promo code ThePostCincy for 10% off your next order. And a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts. All right, and we are back, and we're on to a topic that is near and dear to my heart. The news came on Friday, the classic PR Friday news dump, trying to hide the bad news late on a Friday. Nobody else will be talking about it. They also did it, I believe, right at the filing deadline for teams that will be participating and entering the U.S. Open Cup. Major League Soccer announced that they would not be participating in the Open Cup. At least the first teams of the Major League Soccer teams will not be participating in the Open Cup. They will instead only send the MLS Next Pro teams to represent the Major League Soccer teams. This is a huge departure. MLS has been participating in the Open Cup for a good long while now. The Open Cup obviously started in 1914. It was one of the longest running soccer tournaments consecutively held every single year until the pandemic of 2020 put it on hiatus for 2 years, which was massively disappointing to lose that record. It is a piece of American soccer history that predates Major League Soccer. It is one of the very few things that is relevant in 2023 that does predate Major League Soccer, that they do not own or control. And let's be real, this is an FC Cincinnati podcast, and this is the tournament that frankly made FC Cincinnati into the household name, the undeniable lower division franchise that felt inevitable to join the Major League ranks. This was a team, a franchise that took this tournament seriously from the beginning, and I think was rewarded appropriately. It's a tournament that even this past year, I think all of our fans were incredibly disappointed to not win, especially given how close we came and the quality of soccer that was on display during those matches. Alvaro Barrial's Puskas goal nominee, and then the Miami match that was an all-time thriller. I'll say for me that this is unbelievably disappointing from Major League Soccer, and I'll throw FC Cincinnati under the bus here, although Little Birdie has told us that FC Cincinnati voted against this measure, so take that for what you will. Yeah, I don't know. Chief, thoughts on the latest development?
It just seems like an unforced error by MLS. And it seems that way from a number of perspectives. Number one being that if you were going to do this, there were any number of ways that you could have done this while maintaining the illusion that MLS is not pulling out of the Open Cup. It's not a secret. A lot of teams in MLS trot out reserve teams to play the early rounds of the Open Cup. And they had discussions at the league meetings, apparently, about expanding rosters for the Open Cup to let teams basically field a 2-team without calling it a 2-team. And you could have done that, and there could have just been this unofficial policy in MLS that we send the kids to go play in the Open Cup, and people would still bemoan that MLS doesn't take it seriously, but they've already been doing that for years anyway. And you could have at least preserved the tradition of this tournament, of this part of American history, of this part of American soccer lore. But instead, like, this feels spiteful that we are announcing that we are doing something that we didn't need to announce we were doing, just because we want to make it very clear that we don't care and we don't value this tournament. And also, it sucks that it's paired also with this idea of, oh, we need to decrease fixture congestion. Our teams are too busy. You invented the Leagues Cup that causes the fixture congestion. Like, you have invented your own problem, and the solution is to take out the one that the tournament that you don't own, that doesn't make you money directly, and all sorts of other little things too. That, like, oh, well, nobody cares about the Open Cup. The Leagues Cup is what generates the real excitement. Yeah, because my season ticket package forced me to buy Leagues Cup tickets. It came priced in with Leagues Cup tickets, and if I have tickets in my season ticket package, I'm going to go to the game because I paid for these. Unless I've got something else going on, I'm probably going to go to the game. If you packaged Open Cup tickets in, I would have gone to the Open Cup too. But you didn't do that, and then you have the audacity to wonder, well, why is the attendance so much less for these Open Cup games? Well, because you forced me to buy extra tickets to them, and the games aren't scheduled ahead of time like they were with the Leagues Cup. So there's so much of this whole thing where it's the league being disingenuous about its motivation, the league being it sucks. It's just a stupid thing by MLS. And the one part of this conversation that bothered me a lot online is that it validated the position of a lot of the worst people on soccer Twitter about how MLS views the American soccer landscape, where it wants to be American soccer. It doesn't want American soccer to exist outside of MLS, which, from a business standpoint, sure, I get it. But as a fan of the sport, it's pretty shitty. And the other point that I want to make, too, before I turn this over to let Grayson have his piece, is that this also revealed one of the things I hate most about discourse about sports in America, and that's that there were people that were putting this at the feet of Don Garber and saying, Garber out. A commissioner is a mouthpiece for ownership. Commissioners don't make decisions. Commissioners report the decisions that owners make at owners' meetings. And if you are mad at a commissioner, if you're mad at Roger Goodell ever, or you were ever mad at Gary Bettman in the NHL, or you were ever mad at Don Garber, they are doing an incredibly effective job because they have redirected your anger away from their bosses, the billionaires that own these teams, and onto them. They are highly paid to be the public whipping boy for the general sports fans out there so that people don't have bad feelings about these plutocrats that own teams, that they put all the sins onto this one one person and attribute him as the malfeasant actor or the person who is the tormentor. So if I see any more people blaming Don Garber for these things, I am just going to throw myself out a window. I'm just so sick of this because he's not the villain. The villain is the owners that are using this as an excuse to back their cash grab with the Leagues Cup at the expense of American soccer history.
Yeah, I mean, if the owners thought Don Garber was doing a bad job, they would just simply not make him commissioner anymore.
Right.
If you want to get a sense real quick of how well Don Garber is doing, when Roger Goodell's contract was approaching an end date a couple of years ago without a new deal on the table, MLS proactively gave Don Garber a pretty good contract extension to keep him from going to the NFL to be their commissioner, because
back to the NFL
because he is the most likely successor to Roger Goodell. Just like, he's very well regarded in ownership circles, is what I'm trying to say. Sorry, Grayson. Your thoughts on this matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chief nailed it on the head. The real story here is that this is despite what anybody else might say, what other excuses they have for leaving US Open Cup, this is an issue of MLS wanting to control all aspects of professional soccer in the United States. MLS Next Pro is part of that. This Leagues Cup thing is part of it. Getting as much soccer that people are going to watch under the Apple deal versus having the CBS rights with US Open Cup. And if you're backing ML, and man, there's a lot of the people from outlets around the league that I've seen a lot of people that do like fan media for other teams, like really dunking on the Open Cup or talking about how nobody really cares about it and it's all performative and it's good that MLS is leaving it. Like that's insane. Yeah. Like that's just insane. And it's because it's this is really about, do we care about soccer becoming a broadly popular sport domestically in the US? And I mean, like, the growth of domestic soccer.
Yeah.
Or do we think that it is fine and good that MLS become the complete controller of domestic soccer in the United States? Because that's what this move supports. Because you can talk about like bad fields and stuff, but there's worse fields in Champions League. There's bad fields in Major League Soccer.
We're going to be going to one when we play Jamaica.
Right.
Well, no, but I mean, like, there's bad fields in the league.
Yeah.
New York City FC.
We have New York City FC playing on a baseball field. You have a bunch of these teams that playing on terrible turf that is causing serious injury to players. And there's no chance. And in fact, I think they said that Atlanta is going to have temporary turf for Copa America, but they're not going to have it for Major League Soccer.
Wow. Priorities.
You want to talk about like rotation? People rotated for Leagues Cup.
Yeah.
You talk about attendance. A lot of those Leagues Cup games were poorly attended. Like the game that wasn't in our ticket package was like 18,000. The game we had against Pittsburgh was like 16,000.
Yep.
But if you watched a lot of those other Leagues Cup games, not everybody included them in their season ticket package. That showed. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of teams just didn't have good attendance throughout that tournament generally. On the other hand, St. Louis was selling out Open Cup. We got some really high quality of play from Open Cup. Our semifinal game, you mentioned it, the Barreal Puskas, which if folks didn't see it, it was not one of the 3 finalists, but it was a nominee.
Yep.
And so that was the only one from MLS play, from an MLS player this year.
Yeah.
So if not for the Open Cup, MLS would not have had a player get nominated for a Puskas. Yep. We wouldn't have had the games that we've had in Open Cup when we were in USL, when we had that run where we hosted Columbus, Chicago, and New York Red Bulls. All 3 of those games were incredible atmospheres.
Yeah.
Just awesome experiences. And I'm really glad that I got to go to those games. I'm glad I got to go to US Open Cup games this year. I think I went to all of was the New York Red Bulls game
It was
at
in
home?
New York.
That was
Okay,
away. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was on vacation when that game happened. So I think I went to every home Open Cup game that we had this year.
Yeah.
I think the Open Cup is that's where we hang out. That's the game where we all buy tickets together and we actually we join forces to go to these games. That Open Cup game where we all got lit up in the all you can drink section. That was a great memory. There's so many great memories. Detroit City.
Oh, yes.
It's people say well, if you care about Open Cup so much, go to the games. I do.
Yeah.
Right.
I do go to the games. And you talk about MLS not getting as much money from these games because they're shared with US Soccer and all that crap. First of all, that's none of my business.
Right.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm not
how they split this money.
shareholder.
I don't care how they do it. If you root for, MLS getting the most, the highest share of the soccer market to the detriment of everybody else. I mean, I don't care about US Soccer either, but I think it's a little weird that you're I want MLS to leave Open Cup because MLS teams don't make enough money from it. That's so fucking weird, man.
I want less soccer.
Right.
I want less soccer.
I don't want to watch my team that much.
So they can make more money. I would rather have less games.
Open Cup is basically the only thing going that shows that there is a broad ecosystem of soccer at multiple levels in the United States, and it forces MLS to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I think it's fine that MLS make a little less money on those games as a share of goodwill to growing the sport generally, giving opportunities to lower level teams, exposing more people to MLS, to professional soccer, having people in towns with USL teams that maybe get to host some of these MLS teams. They may say, well, I never went to our game in Chattanooga or Birmingham. Birmingham, when they hosted Miami, had a pretty big crowd.
Yeah.
18,000.
And
I would love to get drawn to play Louisville away just because I'd like to go down the excuse to go down and see their stadium.
Right.
And we spend a lot of money on these MLS teams, and we're not seeing any of that back. Right.
Right.
And I think we pay more. You want to talk about quality of the product? We pay more for tickets to Major League Soccer games than the quality of the product supports. If you look at the level of ticket prices in Major League Soccer versus other leagues that are higher quality soccer.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to pay these ticket prices for the most part because I believe in American soccer. I mean, a huge part of it is having my local team and getting to support a local team.
Yep.
But part of it is also, I believe in the growth of the sport in the US. And I'm fine paying more than I frankly should to see Major League Soccer games, to see New York Red Bulls come play in TQL Stadium, people should pay me to watch. Because I view it in part as an investment in the sport. And yeah, I'm not going to see a financial return like the owners are.
Right.
But hopefully we see a return we see, the growth of the game here. Right. And part of how we've supported the growth of the game was by supporting the Division I professional league. And before that, our local professional soccer team.
Yes.
And I guess, if people have different motivations for why they follow the team, people have different motivations for what they do. Maybe some people are more tied in with like MLS as an entity than I am. Like, I'm not particularly married to MLS as an entity. I just recognize that it's what we have. Right.
Yeah, it's D1. It's the highest level here. I don't love MLS. I don't love, I'm not going to be Rob Lowe with like the MLS logo hat at a game. Like, I support MLS because my team plays in it, and it is at this moment the top quality domestic league in America. If there was another league that was the Division I or had like a higher status than MLS, I would want FC Cincinnati in that league too. I have no brand loyalty to MLS. It just happens to be the league my team plays in, and it happens to be the best league possible for a team to play in the United States.
Yeah, and I do reckon, and I don't want to take away from the work MLS has done building a sustainable, ever improving product. They've done something that nobody has done previously.
But they're also not immune to criticism.
But absolutely, they're not immune to criticism.
Right.
When they do stuff I don't like, I'm allowed to complain about it.
Right.
And people are like, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to stop following? No, I'm not going to stop following the team. I'm going to suck it up and eat it and eat the shit.
But I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to be mad about it.
Right.
But it's insane. But like, don't come and tell me that I can't complain about this when it's like literally the only thing I can do.
Right. You can't do that. You've got to silently protest in a way that I haven't fully formalized.
I'm going to protest with a microphone, and hear all 12 people that listen to this are going to hear about it.
Right.
Sure. Like there's like a ledger probably out there, and there's a certain amount of points on the ledger that would probably eventually get me to drop the team in MLS, which by the way, we're not even like close to.
Right.
But this would be like one of the points. This would go on the ledger, right? Like, and it's like an incredible amount of hubris, and frankly disrespect to your fans, that the reasons that you're giving for doing this are clearly not the reason you're doing this.
No.
And it's like when when like Kim Jong-il would make people say that he went and he shot like a perfect hole-in-one on every hole on the course
on his first time playing.
It's not that he ever thought people would like believe that. It's he like knew he had the like authority to make everybody pretend that they believe that.
Right.
And that's what I'm seeing out of like a lot of the MLS, like the folks like really tied into MLS who are backing this. It's not that like, I don't think anybody thinks they're making a good argument about why a ordinary fan should support this. It's that they're trying to show how captive. Well, they're trying to test how captive people are.
Right.
That they parrot these things, even though they're not remotely convincing.
And the least convincing of it is you're mad about this online, but you're not really mad about it. No, I am. Fuck you. Right. I am mad about this. I'm also mad about it online, but I am actually upset about this. I actually don't like this decision. I have a hot take, and that I think that FC Cincinnati is partially responsible for giving the final death blow to the U.S. Open Cup.
Talk to me.
So, Kevin, if I were to ask you what was the best American soccer game played on American soil in 2023, what would your answer be?
It would absolutely be the FC Cincinnati hosting Inter Miami in the U.S. Open Cup semifinal.
And if you had to pick what sort of the high watermark of Lionel Messi,
it's fine.
all right.
Now
whatever.
you got two.
Jesus.
In fairness, I think he has one. I have one, unless I'm missing a Chief one. But
He's at 4.
We're in a bad spot. We're in a bad spot right now. Do we reset the count on January 1st?
I think we're watching Lady Ballers.
Shit. God damn it. God,
but yes.
Okay. All right. So
the high watermark of a particular Argentinian's career here so far in the U.S.
What would be what would you say?
Yeah, that match for sure.
I don't wonder. Like, look, they have been angling to do this and to divorce themselves from the U.S. Open Cup for a while. Like, that is no secret, I don't think. They've been looking for a way to tactically retreat from this situation because, again, I do believe that the ultimate goal of this is MLS controlling all aspects of domestic soccer, that the ideal world for MLS would be something very akin to Major League Baseball or hockey, where there are lower level teams that are for player developmental purposes only that have affiliate agreements with Major League Soccer teams where they share talent. They have some of their own independent talent. They are run as independent business, but they depend on the talent coming through the pipeline for their lifeblood and for their quality players. I think the goal of MLS is to get rid of the independent soccer system, because then once and for all, they will be clear of the specter of enforced pro rel at some point by FIFA or some other governing body. I think they're just trying to get rid of all that. Mm-hmm. They've been wanting to do that for a while. But I don't wonder if the tipping point this year was that one of our boys, I've already said, it's once per episode.
It counts as one. It counts as one.
It's one per episode. All right. That one of their golden boys' biggest moments, because he didn't have a lot because he got fucking hurt pretty early on in the process, but that one of his biggest moments and biggest matches against one of the best teams he played was on another network that doesn't have a fruit in the logo. And the idea of these games being someplace else is, you know what, we're done with this. This is not happening anymore.
You know how I know you're right? I did sit down and watch the multi-part documentary series of him coming to the U.S. in his early time here. The Open Cup is not mentioned once, which is insane given what his career has been so far in the U.S. So, yeah, Apple and MLS were already this summer, this fall, whenever the relevant episode came out, I was already looking to completely cut its existence out.
We were talking about that ahead of the match. Will Apple let him play on a non-Apple match if they're covering part of his salary?
Right. Which I will also say, it rolls into a greater frustration as well of we were all told to take it on the chin, eat our vegetables by letting this massive contract happen between the league's broadcast partner and one particular player, because it would lead to transformative change for the league, for the players, and we would all see the fruits of that sacrifice in the future. And originally that was promised as expanded roster spend or lessened roster restrictions, which absolutely is not coming, at least not this year. And now we're actually met with taking a piece of American soccer history away from fans of MLS. Like, it's gotten worse.
Can I also be a little bit of a heretic here and
Please.
offer? Okay, so this is not a defense of MLS. I don't want it to be construed that way. But if this is sort of we're in a moment now where we're about to have they did a documentary on ESPN, Requiem for the Big East, where it was talking about the death of the Big East. The Big East has never been more alive, by the way. The Big East is phenomenal basketball. All these people are losers and haters, and they can go suck. If we're doing Requiem for the U.S. Open Cup, I do have a little bit of anger directed towards U.S. soccer.
100%.
That MLS is a bad actor here. But it's not like U.S. soccer is some righteous and good actor who has done everything correctly, only to have these corporate billionaire overlords at MLS take their thing from them. U.S. soccer made this decision way, way too easy for MLS. And they made it so that MLS has any ability whatsoever to even make a cogent argument to withdrawing by refusing to do really, really basic shit, like enforcing any sort of stadium standards on how these games are played. But more than that, just U.S. soccer treated the Open Cup as something that must exist and therefore will always exist. And they didn't do things that are real basic to having a competition that is relevant and useful in the 21st century. Right on down to that, as recently as a few years ago, the official broadcast partner for this was YouTube. And most of these games were streamed on an iPhone on a tripod with amateurs calling the broadcast. And it didn't portray itself as a serious tournament. It didn't portray itself as a serious product. If you stumbled across it, you had to go looking for the U.S. Open Cup. And if you stumbled across it, you would might be mistaken for thinking that you were watching some D3 amateur broadcast of a school with 500 students. And it makes me more mad in hindsight that there was never an attempt to modernize the Open Cup or to tinker with its format, to make it something more akin to the NCAA tournament of a single elimination game with brackets revealed ahead of time so that you would know your entire pathway through the tournament and stuff like that. Just they fumbled the ball on the Open Cup and allowed for a situation where MLS could make this decision without there being not just backlash from some parts of the fan base. If the Open Cup was better run, there would have been universal backlash that would have probably made them think twice about making this move, I think.
Absolutely. And that's what kills me about some of the cheerleading I've seen of this decision, which is people will voice legitimate gripes about the tournament. But the solution isn't for Major League Soccer to abandon it. The solution is to make the tournament better. And there were a number of things that could have been happening that could have made all of this easier. And yeah, Chief, you just rattled off a bunch of them. Stadium standards, broadcast standards, treating the broadcast like an actual, valuable piece of this. This year alone, we went in, I think it was just a couple of weeks before the first matches, before we even knew who had the broadcast rights to this. I think HBO looked to try to quickly sell it to somebody else at the last second because they bought all of the U.S. soccer rights to the national teams, and it came with the Open Cup, and it wasn't clear what they even wanted to do with this. But yeah, a set bracket, seeding ahead of time, and I apparently got shit for this, but the lower seed, quote unquote, getting the right of first refusal for hosting rights that can make these games have big crowds. Look, San Antonio, Sacramento, New Mexico, North Carolina, these are really good U.S. markets that the U.S. men's national team is going to be playing games in. Why not give them sold out crowds of facing, FC Cincinnati's 2 team? And that's the other piece. They could have let teams register 40 players to an Open Cup eligible roster and just let them bring up the youth teams. And then if you say, you know what, the roster or the schedule congestion is too much, you can let the individual teams decide whether or not that's too much. FC Cincinnati this year, through virtually a slightly rotated first team squad at every single Open Cup match. Sure, there were some players in there that we didn't get to see too many other times, but there were a lot of starters in a lot of those games because we wanted to, win a trophy that's been around since 1914. That's what kills me about this is, sure, you might have some valid complaints, but this is not the solution to that. And at a certain point, Like, my love of the sport of soccer comes from some of the romanticism that, yes, is dying left and right these days. But like, there's some value and joy in some connection to the sport, and knowing that we have a tournament that's been going since 1914, that when FC Cincinnati is playing for that tournament, in that tournament for that trophy, that is something that other teams have done in the past that connects something to it. And at the end of the day, and this is the tweet I send out that apparently wasn't very well received by some of the higher ups at FC Cincinnati, but at a certain point, you have to be willing to say that your soccer team exists to not purely make money, that there may somewhere deep down inside, there might be the opportunity for some amount of charity work, of community building, of being a part of some larger piece of fabric that comes from creating mini pitches for little kids to play on. Maybe it could also be you have Open Cup games with cheaper tickets to let a lower class of citizen watch one of your games every once in a while. Like, insane to me that this couldn't be something better. And before we let MLS off the hook entirely, not entirely, but before we give them a reprieve in some of their blame here, some Soccer United marketing did run the U.S. Open Cup marketing and broadcast right ownership from 2007 until 2023. So MLS surely played a role in making sure that this tournament wasn't advertised, wasn't improved upon, had no standards enforced. So super frustrating that it all comes down to this. I don't know. Grayson, you haven't talked in a while. I'll shut up.
Yeah. So,
I'm mad.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, I've always been really cynical about. I've been both cynical and appreciative of corporate, like, community involvement, in the sense that, like, I think it's good that they do it.
Right.
And I think I even, like, wrote about this in, like, the Post.
Yeah.
At one point. And it's good that they do it, but they don't do it because they want to do it. They do it because, like, they know people like to see it. And it's part of, like, their marketing budget. Right. And then some other stuff they might do because people like demand it. And they make the calculation that, like, it's better to do this than to put up with what we have to put up with if we don't do it.
Yeah, ExxonMobil has entire parts of their company dedicated to fighting climate change.
Yeah. Some fans found out that some other teams had free sanitary products in the women's restroom, and brought that to the club's attention. And now that's the thing that FC Cincinnati provides.
Boom.
There's all types of stuff. So, like, complaining about this is an avenue that we can do. And, if MLS really cared about, because people keep going back to the quality of play. Right. If they really cared about the quality of the play, they wouldn't have done something that affects, like, for most teams, 1, 2, 3 games,
right,
that are not as well attended as, like, regular season games for most teams, or, like, playoff games. They had the opportunity to take some action that would affect, the whole season, and the MLS team's ability to compete in Champions League, and the quality of League's Cup games, and the quality of playoff games. When they looked at opening up some of the roster and budget rules, and they didn't. They just didn't. They didn't do anything.
No, they did nothing.
And so, like, they added one thing. They added one thing of note to me. But I think that this is a low ambition move. where
Mhm.
now you can get GAM for transferring designated players outside of MLS, but only if those players are TAM eligible.
Wow.
So only somebody on this only helps teams
that
who
sign cheap players.
that sign cheap designated players. This incentivizes teams to sign cheap designated players.
Right.
It's not a move that's going to help make the league better. It's going to give cheap owners another excuse to be cheap.
Right.
And that's it. So if they cared about quality of play as much as they said they did, they wouldn't be complaining about having to play Pittsburgh Riverhounds one time a year
on a Wednesday.
Right. They would be,
if they
taking advantage of the Apple deal and improving the quality of the rosters right now.
If they cared,
they're not.
They would upgrade the ability to move players back and forth between the two teams for these tournaments. If they cared about quality of play, they would look at things to reduce travel for players. If they cared about the quality of play, they would mandate that no artificial surfaces be used in the league. If they cared about the quality of play, there's any number of things they could do. You know what they could do as well? They could not play the Leagues Cup. That's another thing they could do. That's a perfectly valid option in this space, but that takes money out of their pocket. And I hate that this makes me hate the Leagues Cup because I really enjoyed the Leagues Cup last year. Don't make me hate my other sibling because you're being mean to my brother. Like, don't do that.
Don't even hate my step sibling just because you are being mean to my real sibling.
You're being a shitty parent. Yeah, no, right. That's not fair. I wish every so often MLS would just try not to be an evil corporation for like 20 minutes a day. Just try doing the right thing every so often. Maybe it becomes a habit. I don't know.
Right. The quality of play in Open Cup is not a good advertisement for our league. So we're only going to send our reserve teams with our main team's branding attached to it so that people might accidentally see Orlando City B, think it's Orlando, and then think, wow, this quality is garbage.
Yeah, but if you watch a game and Pittsburgh Riverhounds upset Columbus Crew, like happened this past year,
I'd love it.
Do people really come away from that? Or is your experience watching that game for the average fan? Is your experience watching that game, man? I really wish that we had the quality of play of New York Red Bulls versus Charlotte FC, or is your experience, wow, this lower league team might really pull off this upset?
Yeah.
And then are you excited having seen that lower league team pull off that upset? Right?
The best equivalent to this,
what's the better experience?
No, the better equivalent to this is bowl season in college football. If some like lower division, like Tulane played USC in the Cotton Bowl last year with Caleb Williams, Heisman winner, playing for USC. Tulane won this game. There isn't a soul on the planet that is now going to make the argument that the American Athletic Conference is a better conference than the Pac-12, or that Tulane is a better team than USC. It was just a neat moment where the motivations on both sides were asymmetrical. Tulane really wanted to win this game. USC had a lot of people making business decisions, and an upset happened. It was cool. As an alum of Tulane, it was fucking awesome. But it doesn't say anything bigger other than I had a great day getting drunk and watching a bowl game. And like, to try and make this into some bigger thing is moronic, and you're trying to gaslight me into thinking something that just isn't true. It doesn't work that way.
And before we, last I'll say on the roster stuff. Yes, there are some things that would have needed to be negotiated with the Players Association. They had plenty of freedom.
Yes.
Under the CBA to change specific things. I'm not going to get into it now because we've been talking. I'm not going to get into it right now. We've been talking long enough. But
there's wiggle room.
there are a lot of categories and areas specifically spelled out in the CBA that MLS would not have needed union approval for.
Can I put a bow on the U.S. Open Cup discussion and ask a question to the group?
Sure.
With this decision, does this make the Open Cup loss to Miami even more catastrophic? Because it was probably the last chance an MLS team will have to win Open Cup, and it could have been ours.
I'm still hoping that U.S. soccer grows a backbone, threatens something, and forces Major League Soccer back into the fold.
Somebody dug through this. I haven't
threatened D1 status.
Yeah, apparently, according to the U.S. soccer guidelines on D1 status, they are required. A league maintaining D1 status is required to participate in all tournaments that are sanctioned by the league and by CONCACAF. And the problem with what's going on right now is that apparently, if you do not have a team in MLS Next Pro, you are not going to be eligible for the Open Cups. Like DC United, who does not have an MLS Next Pro team, will not be fielding a team in the Open Cup, which I think is in violation of the D1 status agreement between them or the D1 status requirements for MLS.
So I don't think I agree with that necessarily.
But it supports my point so well.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
That because MLS Next Pro's teams, they're not the same as the MLS teams. They're not the same team. There's no argument you can make.
Yeah.
There's no argument you can make that says that like MLS. I mean, you could make the argument. It's not a good one. They play in a different league. The players are separately signed. FC Cincinnati had to transfer Brett Halsey from FC Cincinnati 2. If FC Cincinnati 2 player wants to play for FC Cincinnati, they have to sign a loan agreement or they have to sign a contract with the first team. Philadelphia Union had to draft a player from their MLS Next Pro team in order to get him on their first team last year in the MLS Super Draft.
Incredible.
There were MLS Next Pro players drafted by other MLS teams in last year's MLS Super Draft. I assume the same thing is going to happen this year. I, again, am not going to do any research on the Super Draft.
Good.
But they're not the same team. You know, there are some priority you get for your MLS Next Pro players. There's a little bit of freedom of movement, but like there's only so many loans that are allowed.
Yeah.
So they're not the same teams. And the pro league standards do require for a first division team that they participate in all representative U.S. soccer and CONCACAF competitions for which they are eligible.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose if you made the argument that the Next Pro team participation satisfies this, that would also excuse DC United because they're not eligible because they don't have a Next Pro team. But I think that's a very contorted reading of this rule. It certainly is not in the spirit of it. And you know what? The Canadian MLS teams are playing in the Canadian Championship.
Yep. It just
the Voyagers Cup or something like that.
Yeah.
No, they have. It's their version of the. Maybe it's called. No, I think it's just called the Canadian Championship, right?
The Voyagers Cup, I think, is the name of the trophy. It's a similar story to the Supporters Shield. They didn't have like a thing, and so all the fans got together and created the Voyagers Cup.
Okay.
Might be the name of the tournament now, but I'm pretty sure it's the name of the trophy.
Yeah, but that the Canadian Championship has.
When we find it 50,000 years from now, it'll just say V'ger on it.
Yeah. The Canadian Championship has CONCACAF Champions League qualification attached to it.
Yeah,
right.
Bullshit. And it's an easy way to get in.
Yeah, and the quality of play, I'm sorry, can't be any better than U.S. Open Cup.
Can we register for the Canadian League instead? That sounds like way more fun. Will they accept refugees from America that want to play in a meaningful cup tournament?
Hey, all I'm saying is Cosmos fans ask themselves that same question back in the day.
Cincinnati, instead of Cincinnati B, it's Cincinnati A.
Cincinnati A. Yeah, that's the frustrating thing, is that this being a league decision takes FC Cincinnati's, decision making away from them. If we didn't want to care about the tournament, that's fine. You can deprioritize it in other ways. But I find it funny that people, when entertaining the idea of, oh, well, they could reduce roster congestion in other ways, like reducing the number of regular season games. And people go, whoa, 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 can't just take games away from them. They'll lose gate receipts. It's like, hey, I think that's exactly what you just did with the Open Cup, my guy. Like, come on now. This is getting a little ridiculous. So I don't know. I like to think that at best, this is a clever negotiating tactic by MLS to put U.S. soccer in a funky bind. And if not this year, at least next year, they come back and MLS has some absurd advantage in the Open Cup that they didn't already have.
If you want to go real nuts on it, okay, we could talk about how when these MLS teams, they go to town, they talk about like committing to the city, they get buy-in for the stadium. They're like, oh, we're going to bring all these jobs. Well, they just cut a bunch of jobs, right?
Yeah.
Like there's people are not going to be working this game.
Yep.
There'd be fewer people needed to work the stadium. It's anti-police officer. Because they pay
overtime opportunities.
Because there's overtime opportunities for police officers. And, especially at a time like this, depending on how you think about the issue, is it really the time to provide less support to our first responders? I think yes, but other people may disagree.
I think what FC Cincinnati is really saying is that all cups are bad.
That's
yeah.
Yeah. Grayson, let me ask you this. Are there specific player bonuses associated with Open Cup performance?
Yeah, so there's the CBA. What it does is it doesn't MLS is not obligated to pay bonuses for Open Cup.
Okay.
But to the extent that U.S. soccer provides funds, they have to be put into the team bonus pools. Like MLS can't just pocket the money. So there's no guaranteed money that players are losing out on, but they're losing out on the opportunity to earn those bonuses. Because I assume U.S. soccer generally pays out those bonuses.
Right. But at a minimum, for some teams in MLS, or for some players in the Players Union, they now are going to make less money this 2024 season than they would have otherwise without this decision being made.
Houston, let's see, what was the bonus pool? It was like $300K for the champion. So that's $300K that Houston had to spread across their 30-man roster. Depending on how they decided to distribute that, it's on average another 10,000 a person. That's meaningful to a lot of players in MLS rosters.
Oh yeah, especially some of those youngsters who, as we've already discussed, were making up the bulk of those minutes, at least in the early rounds. So
could mean something to your boy Kipp Keller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just super frustrating.
Ian Murphy would like that money.
Yeah. Nick Haglin.
Come on, they all want that money. Everybody wants money.
10 grand. Even if you're wealthy, you'd take 10 grand if somebody's passing it out.
Walk right up to the Jack Casino, put it all on red. 20,000 before you know it.
Yeah, Lucho could make a payment to CHCA or something,
It's like a really nice dinner out, guys. Cool. We'll see what happens. I don't know. It does sound like the Independent Supporters Council are going to try to get their groups fired up at their in-person meeting coming up here soon. We'll see what happens. We'll see if the high school drama around supporters groups can be put aside for an attempt at direct action. But
yeah, also, to that 10 grand point, I do, you know, people talk about schedule congestion, right?
Oh, yeah.
And even players talk about like the number of games they expect to play. No players are offering to take less money in exchange for fewer games.
Right.
No.
So they wouldn't be paid the same or more, but have fewer games.
Yeah.
Fewer games. Or given how dumb MLS set up their schedule, the same number of games just distributed at a more ideal pace. Like some teams took a month off for Leagues Cup, but we're playing games every 4 days for 2 months. So stupid.
Also, if anyone at the Independent Supporters Council wants to pay for the postcast to travel to their conference to discuss all of the drama being created, we will, if our expenses and our flights are paid to, I believe, Montreal, I think is where the conference is this year.
Wow, yeah.
If you want to pay, we'll conduct interviews, we'll do anything on your behalf, and we will do... Look, if there's a free trip involved, I'll say anything that you want me to say.
Yeah, and if you don't value having, you know, independent voices in MLS media, you know, that's also your decision.
Right. It's a decision. Yeah. It's a bold one, but I respect you for making that decision.
Speaking of independent media, I got to say, I have a awful, guilty pleasure looking ahead to listening to the Extra Time episode where I assume all of the hosts...
They defend this move.
They will have to defend it, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume all of the hosts hate this idea.
Or it's like the scene in Airplane 2 where they're discussing this like a spaceship disaster in Airplane 2, and they go to different media accounts of what's happening, and the one that they do from the Soviet Union is the news anchor just has a gun to his head from a hand being held off camera as he reports about the impending death of over 250 capitalists.
I've not listened to Extra Time in months.
Yeah, you're not missing much.
I'm not
forward to this.
I'm not bragging about that.
Just stating a fact.
I'm also not telling anybody not to listen to Extra Time. It's my personal hang up that, like, just due to what was happening with various points of the season starting in August.
Yeah.
It just became too hard for me to listen to anything about Major League Soccer. Well, basically after the game in Columbus, I just haven't listened to Extra Time.
That's a good time to check out. I'll say the last 3 weeks, also not great.
No, no, can't see myself.
I don't want to know what they say about Matt Miazga. I don't want to know what they say about the MLS Cup championship. I don't want to know what they think about the U.S. Open Cup semifinal. It's just one thing after another.
Yeah,
and then I saw them talking about not giving Noonan Coach of the Year on Twitter. I don't need to hear him say it.
Right.
I don't listen to stuff just to get mad. That's why I go on Twitter. It's
That's
quicker.
What Twitter's for. Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't take an hour for me to get mad on Twitter.
Just go to the For You tab, scroll down about 4 inches, and we're in, baby.
Kevin, is that a postcast?
That has to be, my God.
What are we watching for the movie? Or should we tell people, check the Discord out to find out what movie we're watching for our special Christmas episode?
So I'll tell you right now, watch any of the Mighty Ducks movies.
Yeah.
What about Cool Runnings?
No, I don't. Maybe we save that for
CONCACAF Champions.
I literally don't know any of the movies about
League.
Jamaica, so
we're in.
The Mighty Ducks. Quack, quack, quack. Ducks
1,
fly
2,
together.
and 3. We're not acknowledging the Disney Plus original TV show at this time.
No. The Gordon Bombay original.
Yeah.
Oh no, I stand with
Emilio.
I stand with Emilio. Over why? Don't Google why he was fired from the show.
I couldn't remember where we stood on certain things. I thought we were against it. All right, we're for it, but it won't be a part of the film room. Just the 3 theatrical releases there.
Three movies, and you don't know which one we're going to talk about, so watch all 3.
Yeah, I still haven't decided which one I'm. Well, anyway, just watch any of the 3. We'll all be. We'll hit. I'm sure we'll hit we'll hit all of them.
Fair enough.
And with that, Chief.
Fuck Columbus.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast, which is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com for all of our written content, as well as links to our social media. You can follow us on Twitter, and as well, you can join us on our Discord server. You can find links to that server both in this episode description as well as on our website. That is where most of our conversations are going on. We have a lovely community there talking about FC Cincinnati, MLS, anything and everything else and everything in between. We also want to give a huge thanks to Jim Trace and the Makers for providing all of the music you've heard throughout this episode. They're an amazing local Cincinnati band. Again, more information about them is in the description of this episode. And if you enjoyed what you listened to and you've made it to the end, so I'm going to assume you liked it, or you just can't reach your stop button, please like us, review us, subscribe to us wherever you are getting your podcasts. That is going to be really, really helpful. But more importantly, share this with a friend. A personal recommendation helps spread a podcast so much further. So please share this if you know somebody in your life who's an FC Cincinnati fan, an MLS fan, somebody that you think would enjoy this. Pass it on over. Thank you so much again for listening. It blows me away that people continue to listen to us, and thank you so much again.